Got it. Testing, testing.
All right, it's 3 o'clock and January 8th. I'm going to call this Administration Executive Committee regular meeting to order at 3 p.m. Do we have any committee or public comments? There's no one here present as public and there's no one online.
So,
Oh, one online. Did have any comments?
guess not.
Are there any comments from the committee?
None. Oh, wait.
I do have one comment.
Yes,
As the committee goes through this, I would like them to think about whether they want to retain items that are on this particular agenda for this meeting or to move it over to water management, because there is a choice there.
There's no water management.
Oh, I mean,
He means PE.
P&E, sorry,
PE
yes.
picked up some and admin picked up some others. So what he's asking is there anything here you just want to shift over to PE?
yeah, so we could,
You know,
there's
since I'm on
something
P,
more
I'm watching
appropriately in P&E, because now we are down to the 3 meetings.
When we get to item 8, then we can have that discussion.
Okay, good.
Okay,
All right. Are there any other comments?
Nope.
Outstanding public record requests.
okay. I need to retract what I said earlier about we were complete with all our public records requests. I got a call from our legal attorney yesterday who noted that there was a public records request submitted by a legal firm working for the GA in 2022 that is still outstanding because it couldn't be released because we were in the adjudication. However, he believes that the adjudication has moved to a point where certain aspects of that public request might actually be allowable for release. So I did not know about this request, and our attorney had dutifully cataloged it and memorized it. And so now we are looking at whether or not there are certain aspects of that that are going to be due to have to be released. I suspect this might be part of the, there's going to be this disclosure part of the lawsuit, and it may be in conjunction with that, but I'm not sure.
Okay.
So I will report on that one. I apologize not knowing about it.
All right, that's fine. It's
Please do.
understandable.
If I remember correctly, there was one they submitted when I said, wait a minute, they're asking for stuff they already have. You know, it's stuff that's in their records already. That may be what you're going to find out.
Yeah, so we have a meeting to go over with our
Okay.
IT. We may have to search through some old records and emails and this and that, but we'll get it taken care
So
of.
they're going to sort through that, and that which has already been released according to the progress of the adjudication will then be sent to the legal team that asked for it originally, and that which has not yet been released through discovery will be retained until such time as it is released through discovery. Okay, thank you.
Yep.
Item number 4, Indian Wells Valley Groundwater Authority. Who would like to report on this?
Well,
I don't know, George. I think you can handle this. I'll chime in.
okay, so we, let's see, we just left the meeting. So there were some interesting things. I think one of the things that I thought was very interesting is they talked about the GSP. And essentially, after many questions from many people, they said they will comply with the Brown Act requirements as it pertains to releasing the GSP for public comment, meaning they have a special meeting on the 28th of January, and they will release it for public viewing and comments 72 hours before the absolute, generally what it sounds like, the absolute minimum by law required amount of time. And it's hundreds of pages of documents. I think that is absolutely within the legal bounds of the law, perhaps, but certainly completely contrary to any concept of transparency by a public agency.
Okay, have they released it to the board yet?
Not our board. I think their board's seen it and their consultants are doing it, but several people commented on that.
Okay.
And so I thought that was one of the more important things. 'Cause I just think, in particular, the fact that we have gone out of our way to release our safe yield report, our storage report, our cost estimate, attempting to establish a good relationship with them of sharing the information where we can. There's nothing in the adjudication that prevents them from legally letting us share. They actually about 10 months ago or so when they first started this, they had a whole schedule of like, we're going to release this chapter to the public on this date and this chapter on this date, and the whole public will get to comment. And what happened in the end was they are holding it close chest. giving it to no one, including their own TAC members, by the way,
Mhm.
because Mr. Decker, who's on the TAC, apparently has not seen it, is from what I could tell.
Okay.
I don't know, Ron, did that seem what,
Yeah, that's what, yeah.
I believe that's what he said.
Ian seen- yeah.
So it's so contrary to what we really want government to be.
Is this 72 hours prior to the next GA meeting?
No, this will be a special, I believe it's a special meeting that they said they called. I think, I don't have all the details. What I suspect is on October 11th, they filed a required legal notice to the county and the city saying that we are going to update our GSP. They weren't required apparently to give it to us. So I got this in their current board package.
Mhm.
And that started a 90-day clock upon which they have to wait 90 days before they can say, here's our submitted plan or our approved plan or our plan given to the water board. And so they've made that notification, which allows them now to have this meeting, which I don't know if they intend to have their board approve the plan at that meeting or to say there's some sort of period for public comment, but
I couldn't figure that one out
I
either.
couldn't,
yeah.
so I don't know I don't know if the meeting itself starts a public comment period or whether they're actually going to adopt it. Because the October 11th was the notification of adoption, which means they legally should have the authority to adopt their revised GSP at that meeting 72 hours after they release it to the public.
Okay, so it's a special meeting. The people will have 3 days to review a document that the staff of the Groundwater Authority intends to have ratified by the members of the Board of Directors of the Groundwater Authority that day. Is that right?
Potentially. I can't say that's the plan.
That's what you think might be going on. Okay, that is certainly inappropriate. And I would be interested to know who made the adjustments and who made the decision to withhold the document until 72 hours prior to the meeting, because
that question was asked and it was, oh, it's in review and our consultants are looking at it.
that
and-
person's contract should have in it an addendum that specifies that they are required to deliver these things a month before it's to be voted on.
I'm not sure what, I'll be honest, their information is somewhat vague.
Okay,
I mean, I wasn't even
fine.
aware that there was a special meeting that they were going to call later in January. So, you know, as I went into that meeting, maybe I missed it in their package, but I don't,
I got you. I get you. Right. So when the document is released, it needs to be divided up into sizes that are readable by a person
Mhm.
inside a day, and then have everybody read their assigned section and then come back with a report.
yeah, we'll work on that with our team.
So-
So we'll be prepared.
I don't know what they're doing. I don't know what their motives are, but dropping a multi-hundred-page document 3 days before it's to be voted on sounds an awful lot like what the federal government does with these 1,500-page bills. And it's done that way to make it almost impossible to understand what the bill is about. So I don't like that. It's the worst sort of example of deep state government, and it should not be done that way.
I believe we found this out. Chuck, our representative, asked a question about that because he knew, hey, when is this going to, and that's when it all started.
Okay.
Out of that also grew the statement that, hey, we're ready to do this and we've got nothing from the water district at all. No reports, no science, no anything, and
Yes, you
Yeah,
have. You've gotten
right.
it months ago that were sent to you.
And Chuck told him that. He says, and he basically said, the only thing that isn't there yet is the model.
And Phil
Okay,
Hall,
and Phil Hall picked up on the model thing, so how can you have anything right if the model's not there? And everyone needs to understand, all the model does is verify your scientific calculations
Mhm.
and tweaks them. So, but all the data is there, all the analysis of the data, all the explanation of how that was analyzed is all there. And that should be taken into account, in my opinion, in the plan as it's revised.
Okay.
Yeah.
yeah, I found it disappointing. They poo-pooed the plan. Oh, it was only 30 pages, your white paper. And I'm thinking, the insinuation was that because the GSP is 200 pages and our plan is
Right.
30, that somehow 200 pages is always right and 30 pages, the right answer
Let's-
could be one sentence.
So let's look at this from a different angle. What they're admitting is that they have no other argument against your plan than it doesn't throw as far as theirs does.
Whatever it may be.
So it's an acknowledgement that they really don't have a good plan, and
So
that ours is probably just as good, if not better than theirs.
So there's another important factor that was discussed, and this was the progress of WERDA. So the
Right.
president signed the WERDA bill. They are going to begin asking for money, an actual appropriation, so they have an authorization for 50 million. They're going to ask for actual money first year, 2027.
Okay,
So they'll ask for that money in 25, 26 timeframe, first quarter 26, what it says in their staff report. Then they will, they're hoping to actually get money. Now that, I'm not going to make a prediction. I'll just say that we've looked at it in a lot of projects in the environmental infrastructure program that don't get funding for numerous years after they've first been requested. It would be a real sign that the people in Washington DC consider this a critically important project if they were to get money that soon.
okay.
So that would be a good thing for us to sort of pay attention to as far as like what is the willpower in Washington DC. There are other things that came out in that are equally important. There was two notional ideas that they're floating out there. The first is they believe that the wording in the language allows them to purchase real property as part of the project. The way we sort of that's interpreted is they said, I wonder if we can consider water to be real property, i.e. water rights, meaning they might want to use, and they're going to ask the government and the Army Corps of Engineers, can we take some of this $50 million and go buy water rights? And there's a number of ways you could do that. Because another thing they talked about at the same time was buying actual pieces of property for mitigation. So you can imagine a scenario where you could go into the San Joaquin Valley and buy 20,000 acres of a farm and say, we're going to take that farm and give it to BLM and turn it into a nature preserve, and that's our offset. Oh, look at that. That piece of property also has 5,000 acre feet of water rights with it, and when we give it to BLM, we'll keep the water rights. You think they might be thinking of something like that, which is actually fairly innovative thinking.
Right.
But
I agree with that.
but whether it's legal, and the other important thing is, if that were to cost $50 million, that means there's $50 million left to actually build a pipeline.
Right.
So those are things that need to be thought about. That was one thing they are going to, it appears they're going to pursue.
Okay.
Another thing that they want to pursue is there's a section in there that's new that says that if you are a disadvantaged community, you can be granted greater than the 75%, up to, I don't know what the percentage up to. You would have to say and prove to the government and the Army Corps of Engineers that the project you're doing benefits disadvantaged communities. I have talked to them a little about this, and I said, wouldn't it be great if you put the water into the aquifer where it helped everybody in the valley, including disadvantaged communities such as Inyo Kern and maybe other places, instead of just plugging it into Ridgecrest, which is the only not disadvantaged community in the area, which would be a nice.
So this might be the argument that gets them to take seriously the possibility of injecting into the groundwater.
We would like to hope.
Okay.
So that was another thing.
A quick question, just for my own understanding. You say that they're going to request the money now, first $50 million, which they probably won't see till 2027. So when they wrote in the paper that they'd received $50 million, that was exaggerating perhaps how far they'd actually gotten with that?
Yeah, I mean, the government has the right to appropriate them $2.
But they didn't actually
they
get $50 million.
No,
They have an opportunity to apply for it.
Sorry, they received permission to ask for $50 million.
Okay, because that's not how their article read. All
Right, of course not.
No.
right, interesting. Thank you. I appreciate the clarification.
Yeah.
Yeah, and they have this sort of presumptive, we're going to get more money in the future, which has to be approved by Congress as well, and there's no
Right.
guarantee of that either.
Yeah.
So,
Okay, thank you for the clarification.
Ron, is there anything?
The other thing
Of
was
the-
they wanted to approve that firm,
Consultant?
the consultant firm, to look, Hayward, for the bond issues. That's Wolf, that's it. They approved proceeding with keeping them online free of charge until they actually do something to look for possible ideas for bonds and funding to come up, I suppose, with their 12.5 million and any other money. And it also was said for other potential water projects, such as what the water district wants to do with wastewater. Remember Phil said that?
Yeah, that was.
And that was sort of unusual. Okay, well, we want to be able to look for more money in case we want to do that.
Okay,
But all it really was, and Chuck asked a lot of questions about that, saying, I don't see dollar amounts in here. But the guy that represents the firm basically says, well, basically what we're doing is we're consulting with you. There is no payment unless we're beginning to find bonds that we're looking for, and then then addendums would be made about what it's going to cost.
So another question for my own understanding. A couple of years ago, they were going to put out bonds to pay for some of the work that they're doing, and they told us they were going to get the bonds for sure, but I've not seen anything about them ever getting bonds at that time.
You're right. This is the same company that did it back then.
All right,
Yeah,
so, and
yeah.
don't they need to have some form of income in order to be able to guarantee the bonds and
Right.
therefore issue them?
Yeah, I would
Okay.
assume so. I mean, there may be all kinds of bond trickery I don't know about, but I'm sure this company will find, but some way you got to pay it back.
Well, I will say this, and our consultant, Clean Energy Capital, did not do an assessment of their ability to get a bonds, but they made a notional comment that they would be surprised if they could qualify, and this is something that they do for a living. They say they would be very surprised if
They qualified.
if
be
they were
able
to
issue
qualify
bonds.
for any sort of bonds.
Interesting, right, that's kind of my understanding as well.
Yeah, so if we're done with that, there's another thing that came up that
Well,
was.
actually, in that particular discussion is when Mr. Hall brought up the fact that the reason we have to do this because the water district refusal to look at during low interest rates bonding out their amount of
Right,
money.
because after their 6-page screed, we refused to
Right, and that's when
cost our
that's when-
customers $30 million to give
And-
them $25
And
million.
that's
Yeah, I
when the
remember
comments came out about Mr. Kaczynski said this, and this, and that, it was basically all, I'll just say called lies is what it was.
that. Right.
And so that came to a halt because like Chuck tried to say, he says, we're not talking about that. We're talking about this company, what
Yeah.
we're going to do.
Right.
Why are we bringing this up?
Right.
And so that was brought to an end, but that's when I'm saying, I don't normally get up there and say anything,
Mhm.
but when my name is brought up, and I'm sitting
Absolutely.
right there, I felt necessary.
Okay, good.
Okay.
So it's interesting that Mr. Hall should bring that up. I remember the discussions we had after they asked us to borrow a great deal of money in order to give it to them. And I think the conversation went along the lines of, we need to keep our ability to borrow money open because there might be crises that popped up that we needed to pay for, and that we also had equipment that needed to be maintained and improvements that needed to be made, and that we couldn't afford to give them $25 million and put ourselves at risk. And I think that argument still applies today. And I think that Mr. Hall knows that it's a legitimate argument, and he's trying to make light of it because it doesn't reflect well on him when he's trying to get the board at the Groundwater Authority board, GA board approval for
Yeah.
demands for new loans from the water district.
Yeah.
An
Okay.
interesting sort of comment to make in a town where several massive earthquakes have occurred on a day in which there are fires raging in LA going to cause all kinds of havoc
Right.
is complete demonstrations that you need to be prepared for emergencies, and you can't just tap out all your resources.
Plus, we had a $7 million hit against us with having to replace Northwest Transmission Line, an event that proved absolutely that our concerns were legitimate and remain legitimate.
Correct.
Okay.
So there was another thing that came up, the Rademacher thing came up, and they were, to prove that no good deed goes unpunished. When we first had that discussion, it was the water district stepped up and said, we will try to help because the Groundwater Authority had said they hadn't done a lot of contracts like this. They weren't sure how they were going to do it. It was going to take a long time. And of course, whether they got a contractor or not, the rationale for why we are holding up on that particular project, because the Northwest Transmission Line isn't online, and we're not willing to risk damaging our only other major artery that carries water through our whole system. So we have to be cautious because we have 30,000 other people to worry about. So it was portrayed by the GA that, we're the bad guys and we're delaying this and we're doing that. And, really we're trying to help. And there was a very emotional and very, quite frankly, compelling testimony by a young lady that lives in the Rademacher area and the difficulties she's having. And Director Griffin volunteered to help, and I'm going to get with him, and we're going to get a big poly tank and get her some
Do some water hauling.
some water hauling for
Okay.
her. And, it is compelling. I think it's also worth mentioning, that to the Groundwater Authority's credit, there's a large amount of money being spent, over $1 million to bring 5 people off of that well, which is producing bad water. That's a sizable investment to
That's
help people
GA,
out.
that's funds that the GA.
And that's why I'm crediting the GA. They are willing to spend that kind of money to help people out. And so you have to give credit where credit is due. You know, when the government comes in and says, you know, we're going to spend $1 million to help out 5 families so they can have good water, you can't really throw stones at that.
Okay.
It is expensive and it's paid for by taxpayers, but, you know,
And we reassured them that we'll have that done before summertime,
yeah.
because that's the big worry that it hits
Yeah,
summertime.
Phil Hall, of course.
And I'm hoping that, I know Jason's looking, but we reassured him that that project would be, and they'd have water from the system by summer.
To be clear, I said nothing can be guaranteed 100%, but the water district understands this
Our
is
goal.
not something we want to do during the summer.
Okay.
And we are well aware that we want to have this project done before summer. Is that correct, Jason?
That's 100% correct. And phase 2 is still in the design portion of it. So I can't guarantee when we're going to get that back and when we can get the project done.
But phase 1 picks up that house with the 5, or that well, it serves 5 people,
It
correct?
picks up 2 of them.
2 of them,
Yeah.
okay.
So the
So
goal,
I have her number. I'm going to call her and we're going to personally go above and beyond to help that family out.
so clarification from my own understanding. Our goal, you told them our goal is to have our system replace theirs by summer,
Yes.
with the idea being that the Northwest transmission line would be in place and operational so that it should something come up hooking them in, that we would still be able to provide water to our regular customers through the Northwest transmission line.
Yeah, and I think we do believe that we should be taking ownership of the Northwest transmission line in the February timeframe. Is that correct?
The board granted the extension, the district granted the extension until the end of February. So worst case scenarios, we receive it in March.
So we hope to do that
Your alternate,
sooner.
and got it, and things happen, so it may or may not go towards the timetable that we have set for the Northwest transmission line, and you have an alternative to assist people starting soon, which is to provide them with a poly tank and water hauling. Is that
Yes.
correct?
Is correct.
Okay. Are you going to be a poly tank which will serve all the 5 houses, or just on a house-by-house basis?
The young lady who's,
Yeah.
who testified, she's the wife of a person who is currently at boot camp for the Navy.
I don't doubt her need.
And-
I'm just trying to figure out if the poly tank is for one house or for the bunch.
It is
her.
for the one house because
Okay.
she seems to be particularly
She
concerned.
is the one who is under the greatest impact.
That seems to be the case.
Okay.
The question I have, and Jason, you're going to get this probably soon, is what prevents us, except maybe manpower and time, there's certain work we can do, right? So even if it's up to the tie-in, but we don't do the tie-in until the Northwest Pipeline is up and running satisfactorily. So it is as though we can't put a spade in the ground.
We could, I mean, technically we have the design for phase 1, which is about 20% of the entire project.
Right.
So yes, we could put that in and not do the tie-in.
Right.
But-
But that's up to you and the staff. I don't know about your timing and everything else. I know there's other things going on. But it's just a thought that came to my mind that the only thing we're worried about is the tie-in until the Northwest Pipeline.
Logistically, it just makes a lot more sense to try to do the whole thing at one time since we're there.
Yeah.
And we will do whatever we can to try to get the people in water as soon as we can.
Yeah.
You know, we can do the loop at a later date if need be, but we'll try to get everybody in water as soon as possible.
Okay.
All right.
Good.
Okay. All right. Thank you.
I believe that was it.
I think that was the bulk of it, yeah.
Yeah, those are probably the 3 major things that were talked about.
Are there any questions from the public or other committee members about that report?
Yes, can you hear me?
Yes, sir. Please go ahead. Name?
It's Mike Neal.
Oh, hi, Mike.
Hi. Yeah, you couldn't get down there. So anyway, I'm doing it this way.
All right.
He's the big eyeball.
Oh, that's an eyeball. Wow. Okay. 2 things that I'm hearing that I think most people would probably draw from the discussion we just heard here. The first one is it really is worth your time to come to some of these committee meetings. You get a lot more detailed information a lot of times about things going on, things you kind of raise your eyebrows and go, oh, really? Especially when you have discussions like you just had about the trickeries of the GA and how they operate or don't operate, what the case may be. The second one would be to certainly a lot of people that I know is why is the GA getting away with continuing to act so high-handed like they don't have to answer for anything that they do or any of the conclusions they come to. That they continue to try to slander the only elected water group in this valley, which is the water district, and throw shade on them at every given opportunity, and of course, all the while asking for tens and tens of millions of dollars to pursue their, let's call it their dream, and this silliness of let's buy real property and take over their water rights. Well, that still ignores the fact that the state determines what allocation of those water rights you're going to get. And some of the statements made at what the last district meeting by your general manager indicated that the very best it's ever going to be is 50%. And yet all this time they've been saying, oh, we're going to get an average of 40% of the allocation. And therefore then we need to buy, 8 million acre feet of water rights or whatever. Well, they need to buy a lot more than that. And that's obvious. Anybody with just a rudimentary amount of sense could figure out quickly that the best average they're ever going to do on water allocations is probably 25% of what they're going to buy, which is just stupid, to be honest. So, and the third one, I guess, would be if you pay attention, you have to pay a little more attention to what you hear coming out of the GA's mouths of various members and reports that you hear back here, like what we just heard. And you can figure out that this unelected GA board is really not a board. They're just puppet hands, except, of course, for Chuck, who's the only one that speaks out in favor of the people. That the people really running it almost sounds like singular. In the singular is Phil Hall. He pushes his little agenda through the board members and continues to ignore good sense and at the same time what's best for the people of this valley. So I'll just, don't mind repeating myself, and I'll say it again. The GA, the water district, if they don't win over what's right for the people through this adjudication suit, they need to do whatever it takes to kick the GA out of this valley. They have proven themselves now over all these period of years to be antithetic to what's good for the people here. And I certainly have had enough, and a lot of other people have had enough of that. So that's all I have.
Okay, thank you for your comments, Mike. So Mr. Neal brings up a good point, but additionally, they're going to be buying water from the water rights from the San Joaquin Valley. They're going to have to be competing with Los Angeles and Bakersfield and Fresno and every other city that's running low on water. And I don't know where they're going to find water in a valley where there isn't enough to support the current population. And on top of that, going back to the GA discussion, some of those counties are now passing ordinances that are forbidding anyone from pumping water out of the county in order to retain that. So I think this is a much more difficult situation than proponents at the Groundwater Authority are either wish to acknowledge or would acknowledge, even if they did understand it well.
Let's be clear here. They want to buy the water from the state water project. San Joaquin Valley gets theirs from the Central Water Project. That's a completely separate project. That's run by the federal government. So the GA is looking towards the state water project. Okay?
Right.
And you're right. There's no sense of a county has to allow it to leave or not leave. Okay, because you're buying it from the state, more or less, through one of the contractors. I just want to make that clear. I keep hearing San Joaquin, which is a Central Water Project. That's a different system.
I was merely referring to it as a geographic location, not as a water system.
But whatever location it's from, I would assume, and I'm assuming that if you're buying water from the state water project, you're not taking it from a certain county because the state gets it from the basin. Okay, just lost my word right up there, but the one where all the smelt live. The Delta, yeah, from the
so
Delta.
that's
Everything
the
comes there.
California State Water Project.
Yeah, state water project comes from the Delta.
So,
But Mike was right in saying that the percentages are going to be much lower than people expect. In fact, at the conference we just came from, and George could attest to this, they're saying that because of the requirements for the smelt and everything, all the fights that are going on environmentally, that they've already dropped their percentage for the coming year, and they expected in the upcoming years that around 20% will be a good amount if you get that. Yeah.
Whether it affects directly the ability to buy from the state water project or not, there are counties which are passing regulations saying you're not allowed to sell your water to anybody outside the county.
So
So
I have
I
a,
would assume that would be people who have water rights and would like to get involved in
Yeah,
selling them,
yeah.
not existing.
Trading it
personnel.
somehow,
Correct.
yeah.
can I ask another question? I mean, I believe this to be true. Does not Sigma have a part of the regulation says you can't fix your basin's problem by creating a more significant problem in another basin that is not in compliance? And virtually every basin in the San Joaquin Valley is not in compliance. And so like, if you're going over to the San Joaquin Valley to get this water, aren't you in effect solving our problem by taking from a basin that already, hasn't fixed its problem yet? And wouldn't that be prohibited by Sigma?
So
I think that's a provision.
I couldn't tell you right off the top of my head, but it does tie in with a reservation that the Department of Water Resources had when they first reviewed, not approved, but reviewed the groundwater sustainment plan. At the end, they said that they are uncertain about the use of imported water to bring the valley into balance. So that implies that in fact, that is not a solution they find acceptable.
Interesting.
Okay,
All right,
right.
I think that was it.
Let's go on to item 5, please.
The potential impact on recycled water and the district's need for imported water. So, the first thing I wanted to bring up was one of the reasons we think recycled water is important is because of this California conservation as a way of life. Renee is going to brief the board in a more full sense on a fantastic report she got from the state from our first submittal. She got some feedback, got some access to some new data. What that data shows is what our allocation under that regulation would be for people and for watering their lawns in 2025, 2030, no, 2030,
Indoor and outdoor
30,
use.
years.
Indoor
By
and outdoor
2040,
allotments.
In 2040, the allowable use at the current population for the Indian Wells Valley is 4,040 acre feet. That's our allocation in 2040. Now, on top of that, our commercial, we have about 1,500-ish acre feet a year in commercial. But when you look at that number, and that's sort of like, and that, of course, there's a lot of presumptions there. That does not presume that we've gotten a variance for swamp coolers. It presumes that we have
Right.
zero population growth. But when you start to think about it, our allocation now, under the current set of rules, was 5,000 something. But it drops almost 1,500 acre feet by 2040.
Mhm.
That's the real message here. From between now and then, we're still pretty close, but I'm telling you, there's no room for growth there. And this is why we believe the recycled water project is important and the variance for swamp coolers is important, because there's no growth without those two things.
Okay.
So those are, I think you'll see that data at the full board meeting. And I think it's important to look at it because those are sobering numbers.
I look
And
forward to
then
getting-
you look at recycle, you start to say, how much water can you import when you can only use this much? This has been one of our arguments all along.
Right, so if the GA is promising to import 6,000 acre feet into the valley, and that, as we've been informed, the water district will be forced to take it, then that's more water than we're actually going to be allotted by the state of California.
And that's the catch-22 we're facing.
Okay, interesting. I look forward to hearing the report and the discussion that follows. Was there anything else on item 5?
Nope.
Any comments from the public on item 5?
Oh,
Okay.
Oh.
there is one other thing I think I do need to report. I think we'll be sending a letter, talk to legal, we're going to send a letter formally requesting the city go through whatever process it takes with the GA to allow us to have legal rights to the water off their new wastewater treatment plant, because we don't want to invest a bunch of money studying a
No, no.
recycled water project if we don't first know that we can have the water.
Right. This isn't a charity.
Yeah, I talked with JA about it, and we're gonna make that a formal
I am
request.
heartened that elements of the city are working with us to resolve these issues and move forward with the recycled water project. That is some really good sign.
Okay.
All right, item 6, please, alternate water sources. Anything to discuss on this one?
This came from the water management meeting, obviously, and that's where we cover things like potential water banking with LADWP,
Okay.
as well as some other sources of water up towards the Little Lake area and things like that. Nothing's really progressed there yet, as far as I know, George, except for the studies that we did up there. But some potential still exists. It's one of those. Each of those are one of the pieces to the puzzle of the total overall water we can bring in for a lot less than $300 million. So right now, it looks like we're concentrating on the recycled water, but it doesn't mean that a couple of these might need some further investigations and cost estimates and things like that. And I'm leaving it up to George and working with our consultants at this particular point. And the only two I can really think of, George, is anything coming out of Little Lake. I don't know if we're done with that one or not, but when I talked to Chuck, he seems to think there's something available there. And and also our wells that are up in Inyo County.
Yep.
And some of the discussion there is they're in Inyo County. Why don't we pump them and just re-inject them into our aquifer right there?
Right
Because
inside,
we're
inside Inyo County here.
Inyo County.
Yeah, that would,
It's never leaving the county.
that would certainly
Yeah.
meet the letter of the county
Yeah.
law. Of course, it might be accused of violating the spirit of it.
But those are other projects that are potential to
Yep.
look at, because let's say you get 15 or 2,000 from wastewater and you can pick up another, I'm not sure what our wells pump up there, Jason, 800 acre feet, 1,000, somewhere like that? Is that the latest that you knew
I would
about?
have to get with Justin. He does
Yeah.
that monitoring about what,
Yeah, I'm gonna say, I keep 800's in my mind, but I've heard as high as 1,000 or so. But there's something there. And then if in fact, Little Lake is the same thing, you could leave Little Lake and go put it right back in on the Inyo side, right into our aquifer, if that's, with some small piping. So all those are little things we need to continue to look at that we don't want to lose track of.
yeah, and we need to close the books on the brackish water study. The
Yes.
company owes us a briefing. We've repeatedly, and Renee has repeatedly asked for it. It's been promised to us. The board deserves that final out brief on the results of that study, and we need to close the books on that one. And we keep asking, and they owe us that. We granted them some sort of extension to the closure on that project, and but I'm kind of drawing the line in the sand. You got to get this thing done.
And it's a good project as a stopgap, because we had somebody to take the high brackish water, like Coastal wanted it and Searles Valley Minerals wanted. But I don't know where that's headed, because of the biggest brackish source is under the base. And I don't see them allowing anything to happen there, at least under our view. My feeling is, after we get closure of that, is we need to encourage, I don't know how we would do this, but this is technology and research and studies that have been done that may be very valuable to the Navy. Because if they themselves want to do brackish water recovery on the base themselves, which, we don't have control over it either with the state, it's a federal thing. It's something that helps relieve the use of our freshwater aquifer.
Right.
Now, of course, everyone's saying that any brackish water you take counts towards depletion of your aquifer.
Not new water.
It's not new, that's the term, like new water. But however, if the base decides they want to do it, and they can say, hey, we're doing brackish water recovery to supply our water needs of 2,000 acre feet a year, so we basically don't need to we don't need to run our wells.
Mhm.
We're going to do this.
Okay.
That helps out a lot. So I don't know how that would happen, George. I don't know. I know we're involved with it. Once it's closed and done, how do we open up that communication?
Yeah.
And say, here's something we've done and studies we've done that we're willing to share with you if it's something you're interested in.
Yeah.
Yeah, because I know many bases have done brackish water recovery. Yeah.
Oh,
So that's where they are with that one, yeah. Mhm.
so the brackish water study the location for the study is actually in Inyo County, is that right?
No.
No, what the study found was that the most feasible areas where the salinity was appropriate for
Right.
the type of technology were all located on the Navy base. The Navy base was unwilling to allow any sort of brackish water reclamation projects to be performed on the base due to national security reasons.
Where you first decide
That sort of put a bit of a dagger in the heart of any real feasible usage of that technology.
Okay. Right.
There are other pools of brackish water available, but not as quality brackish as what's available in our
There's a
base.
certain range of 300 part per million to 500 is
But
what
that's why
economically
The
feasible.
base will be concerned about subsidence if they start to tap into their brackish
Correct.
water. So water pumped into the aquifer in Inyo County at the north end of this valley might help to mitigate that problem. Plus, it's also a good way to mitigate the use of the fresh water that's been taken out of the Inyo County portion of this basin.
Yeah.
And helps you to keep the brackish water from spreading out and causing issues with other parts of the aquifer. So that's interesting.
You're being so logical.
So
I'm
the other
proud of
thing
you.
that I think is interesting is that every couple of years, right, the normal pattern of weather in California, except for from the year 1900 to the year 1980, historical records have shown that it's 2 years of floods and 3 years of droughts. We just 2 years ago, I think it was, we had the Los Angeles Department of Water and Power dumping something like 12,000 acre feet of water into the desert, to some which would get into the aquifer, but mostly evaporate. It would be nice if we could come up with an injection plant to treat surface water and then inject it into the ground. And if the groundwater authority is planning to bring surface water, which they are, into the valley in their pipeline, it would be interesting if they could tie into that and we could have a cooperative that would allow LA, instead of wasting the water, to dump it into the aquifer here, that the groundwater authority could make use of if some amazing circumstances occur. They actually get groundwater through a pipeline into our valley. And perhaps that might be the basis of also the groundwater banking agreement that has been bandied around. So I think there are opportunities for alternative sources of water.
Mr. President, I'll just say that I had this very discussion with Mr. Strand from the city. I would encourage you to maybe have a conversation with him. I think he's pretty supportive of the sort of notions that you're talking about, and I think it would be good if you talk to him, maybe he could set up something with the mayor, the new mayor, and you guys could jointly discuss that, because I don't think the city is terribly far off from what you just said.
Okay, all right. Is there anything else?
The city just wants, because right now the statement being made by Ron to certain council members is, what if the water district is wrong? And so I think they want to feel strongly that even though we're looking at the water and storage and the safe yield, that regardless, we're still looking at these other projects.
Yeah, we're not focused on one solution.
Right.
We understand that this is a serious issue and we have to find a solution or solutions that address the issue.
And I would appreciate their cooperation and continued cooperation in working towards a solution, which is the most economical one, I believe, for our community.
I agree. All right. Anybody else on the committee with comments for item 6?
Nope.
Mr. Neal, any comments?
Yes, some comments. Thanks for the lead-in you just gave, David, because I was going to bring up what I brought up before, and which is, I guess, an idea that might be a little bit new and doesn't necessarily sound like a good, huge source. But, like you just said, we have cycles of years where we have rains and then we don't have rains. We've had, times when we had, good amount of rain in the valley. And I think I mentioned this at one of the last meetings or before that perhaps we should look at some theoretical approaches to grabbing a hold of rainwater that falls down on the valley. And the easiest conceivable one is to go along the foothills and grab water coming out of the drain spots out of the major canyons, which, you just said a lot of it, settles down and then evaporates. Well, let's not let it evaporate. Let's figure out a way to let it punch on through and going down into the aquifer. And, wherever we find locations like that, where we're naturally given large acre feet of water coming down to a central point, and take advantage of that along with whatever, LA's not going to give up a gallon of water. They don't have to, but, once in a while they have the overages that we could also grab, and these could be, co-joint kind of ventures. Probably take a little bit of innovative thinking, but, that's what people in this valley is supposed to be good for, the last 60 or 80 years. So we could pull it off. One thing that I'm not getting feedback as to whether it sounds like what I brought up is coming across is a what I would call a gentle-handed venture to get people to understand the overall situation and how close we are to being, net zero on our water balance here, and get rid of basically decorative grass in the lawns. And we have the means to locate the households that have grass, particularly in the front yards, which is already enjoined by state law. You can't even do that. And we got that. I think it's called WaterView software program, and the state's already done surveillance, and it's easy to take a look at that, go, locate who's got grass and who doesn't. And if you can locate and do the calcs and do the evaporative transfer of water off those lawns and figure out how much you might be able to gain just from that. I haven't seen any move on any effort being done on that. I think it would be worthwhile to see the numbers. If we got all the owners of households that have grass in the front yard to eliminate that grass, how much water will we save from not having to water that? And would it be worth going to the state? And my approach, of course, would be go to the state and say, look, you passed the mandate. We need water. We need money, cash for grass money, and get these people to get rid of the grass. We're going to get back this much water for it. It's got to be, that's a continual source. It doesn't change. It always will be the same as to how much we gain back. And I think that's worth pursuing. I just haven't seen, a lot of traction on the part of the water district on that one.
Yeah.
So I think that's it.
We did. Thank you for your comments. Go ahead.
You're right, but however, I'm encouraged because as I drive around the city and the area, I see more and more people having the landscaper out there taking out the grass, putting in DG. I see many businesses doing it. I just went by I was riding somewhere today down an area, and they're out there digging out the grass and they're getting ready to put rocks in. So you're right, Mike, but I think the citizens themselves, especially the ratepayers, we've seen this in the reduction of water requirements. People are doing it on their own. You're right, if there's some incentive there's a few out there, but heck, it may just be a knock on the door saying, hey, have you considered this? But I'm just saying that I see a lot of it. Almost every single week, I'll see one or two places that they're ripping everything out and taking their grass out. And sorry to say, some will just take the grass out and let it grow to weeds, but most of them are doing some nice stuff if they can afford it. And so I do appreciate that from our community, and I think we'll continue to see it. And there's no doubt about it. I hate to say it, but rate increases also encourage that to happen as well. And that's not why we're doing the rate increases, but it does encourage it.
Right.
Yeah.
So we did have a cash for grass program. And there was
Easy for you to say.
some money left over in it because it wasn't really
Yeah.
tapped into by members of the public. But Jason, our peak pumping, we were what, 9,600 acre feet per year?
We were about 9,100,
9,100, and we're currently at,
about 5,700.
and I think probably most of that has been people removing lawns and other high water usage things. So that your point is, I believe, I agree with your point,
Yes.
Mike. The path to sustainability is to take lawns and replace them with desert appropriate landscaping.
So,
And I would love to have some money or grant money from anyone to help people with that, because I'd like to see people who can't afford to do a nice job on landscaping get assistance with landscaping so that their yards look good. They can take pride in their property and make the town look a much better place.
yeah, and I'll also say, we talked a little bit about California conservation as a way of life. One of the nice things about that regulation, it does, as we draw towards these 2040 requirements, the water district, in essence, has a mandate to reduce water usage. And while the regulation itself is prescriptive in how much water you can use, we do have flexibility in how do we want to achieve these reductions as time goes. And there are cities who have to achieve 30, 40, and greater percentage reductions in their water use to comply with this.
Yep.
And we're really lucky that we don't have to
We're
do
already
that much. But
close.
the nice thing is the state has set up the structure, and then it is up to us to determine what we believe is the best local method to sort of achieve those reductions. So within that construct, the California conservation is a way of life that gives us a bit of we'll call it the hammer to do things to advocate for funding and other things that will allow us to get these programs in place.
Okay, thank you. All right. Any other comments on this?
Yeah, but obviously, the second most important thing is swamp coolers. We've talked about it for over and over and over again. And I know people are leery saying, oh, it's going to cost me so much more for electricity and cooling. But, you know, these new air conditioning units, these split units are relatively inexpensive. They're not, you know, tens
Not
of thousands
free,
of dollars. And then also when you look at the power consumption of them and the fact that you just run them when you need to run them, it could be fairly comparable to running a swamp cooler full time with the water usage and the pump running all the time.
Right.
It takes a lot of power, and a lot of water. And we've always said it'd be nice if we could look at a comparison, but it'd be nice if there was money available there, because I know there's people in the committee who said if I had some money available to help offset the cost of the split system, I'd be willing to do it. And that's other money that we need to look for as well, because that'd make a big impact.
The small houses up and down Balsam Street, which could
Yes.
easily be cooled adequately with split units in the rooms.
Yes.
Yeah.
Yeah.
I can tell you this, is when you talk about the cost of water, as we move towards rate increases, I've lived for a year in a house with a swamp cooler, and summer to winter, my water bill is $100 difference, middle of summer when I'm
Oh,
running
yeah.
that thing. So,
Mhm.
you know, unfortunately, and very much unfortunately, the cost of water is getting to the point where is the offset and the trade-off between using water in a swamp cooler and using electricity in a efficient HVAC unit is not that great, I don't believe.
So I think I hear that the next big area for water savings and usage really is the swamp coolers. And it would be nice if there were grant money that would help
Yeah.
people who could not afford it to replace their swamp coolers with something like a whole house air conditioning or split system. Certainly people who are elderly or living on a fixed income would benefit from that, because
Yes.
if you have a swamp cooler, as you all know, a swamp cooler house in the middle of summer is like a little bit like living outdoors in Florida. It's 80 degrees and 100% humidity.
Jason, how much did you estimate the swamp cooler variance? You did some rough calculations.
About 1,500 acres.
About 1,500 acre feet a year.
That's-
pretty
That's
significant.
nothing to sneeze at. That would bring us down to what?
If we continue to use what we're using, about 4,200.
Nice.
Yeah. So I mean, there's significant savings there. Now, the problem is you can get a variance for that under California Conservation of Way of Life. You get rid of all them, then you don't have a variance, which is,
Well,
that's a double-edged sword as well. The more you save, the more they punish
Well,
you.
looking at it from sustainability of the valley, regardless of whether the state demands it or not, it's certainly a smart move, and it would make people much more comfortable.
I think you're 100%.
Well, I think once they go to a split unit or some kind of air conditioning, they'll never go back.
I know, right?
You should know that.
I do.
Yeah.
Makes my bedroom. look
Yeah, I
like that.
know. Exactly.
All right, item 7, draft agenda.
Let's see here.
Who put this together, sir?
Of course, item B, the committee will recommend approving that interior recoat.
I didn't see anything in the agenda that raised any issues for me. Do you see anything in there, Ron?
The only thing that I should have said is, it's been going on for maybe a year or more. Didn't we used to have at least one, like number 10 or 11, somewhere right near the end saying the next meeting is scheduled for? Did we ever do that? Packet? I mean, it's typically, you'll see it sometimes at the next, it's sort of a, okay, it's up to you, David, if you want to put it on. I just noticed it and I said, oh, normally we announce when the next meeting will be before we close our meeting,
Easy
just
to add.
before adjournment. It's no big deal. Yeah.
Yeah, please add that then. Thank
Yeah,
you.
I mean, just put it just
Helpful.
before adjournment if you want, however you want it, Mr. President. It's up to you.
I shall leave that to staff to
Okay.
determine where that best should go.
And otherwise,
Now you're making me think and we do have items on there do we have something about the board workshop? Do we
Yeah,
need
is-
something?
it's a number 4 under general manager, correct?
Yes.
Okay, there we go. Good. Yeah,
Yeah.
okay, so we got the stuff in there.
Do you have at this particular time for a list of items to be discussed on that?
We have a draft list and just notional ideas. We have not finalized yet. We're still waiting for all of our board members to input anything they have. Is that what we're waiting for?
I have not received anything from the board yet for
So-
the
so-
workshop, and I have sent numerous emails.
I'm leaving it up to David and
Yeah,
George.
so we have internal things we'd like to talk about, but we certainly would like more board input.
All right, I officially inform you that I do not have any contributions.
And I haven't either, because I know what George is going to put on it. And I say, well, that looks.
That,
like
that, that
what we
means you're gonna be
do.
subjected to George talking a lot.
Remember, George, we have, how many, we have 4 hours, is that it?
Yeah.
4 hours.
Okay.
Yeah, or less, 4 or less.
You
I
can
can-
say
I can
anything you
talk-
want as
I
long
can
as you
talk for
squeeze
4
it into
hours.
4 hours. Yeah, all right, great. All right, so
Yeah.
you'll just
But
let
unless
the
you,
directors, other directors know that if
this is the last call.
this is last call, if we don't hear from them, the assumption is they don't have anything to add.
Yeah,
Then we get that off your plate. All
exactly.
right, thank you.
Otherwise, I just as soon move on with
Okay,
the agenda.
item 8, future agenda items.
All right, this is where you wanted to discuss what should be left on here or not, right? On this agenda.
George was saying there were
Yeah.
some items that he thought were better off in plant and equipment.
I was only suggesting if the board members thought there were items that were better put into the other one that.
I-
Asking if we did. Okay, go ahead, Ron.
David, we sort of spoke about this, you and I did, that maybe the origination of ideas that we want to continue to follow through with come from this group. In other
So
words,
alternate water
it's not alternate
sources.
water, we say we definitely want to go ahead and move over to plant and equipment, the follow-up on doing research and development or studies into something.
Mhm.
You know, then we would pass it over there. Because these things can stay on here forever. We'll be talking about the same thing over and over again and getting nowhere. But at some point, we may want to say, okay, the water up in, the wells that we have up in Inyo, do we want to take a serious look at capturing that water and re-injecting it?
So if I understand you correctly, you would keep alternate water sources on the agenda
Yeah.
so long as we had action items for the staff to do research for ideas that are generated.
Yeah.
I agree.
And we might have an action item at some point when we get through one point, say, hey, George, now's the time to talk with legal, talk with everything, see if we can get that water and re-inject it, and let's estimate costs.
So I
Because I
see,
just don't want to be spending money
Right.
left and right. Yeah.
got it.
And
Okay.
So I don't have any problem with it here myself.
So potential impact of recycled water on the district's need for imported water. That was an item that was previously on the water management. And that is the one that I think that staff would like to see returned to, sent to plant and equipment. Does that seem appropriate to you?
I think so.
Okay, well,
Yeah.
I say we take number 5, potential impact for recycled water on the district's need for imported water, and move that to plant
Because
and equipment.
it's under development stage, if you know what I mean, under research and
Yep,
development
no,
stage, yeah.
Absolutely. And that they're the ones best qualified to discuss the
Yeah.
issue, and that's the best forum for doing that. So that one's going to be moved to P&E.
Yeah.
All right.
It's,
Is there something else that needs to be shuffled around?
I don't, I like keeping groundwater authority here.
I do as well.
Yeah. Mm-hmm. Right,
Yes, yes,
yeah.
absolutely. Okay, all right. Any other comment?
The other comment I made, under alternate water sources, do we want to, itemize briefly the 3 or 4 we keep wanting to talk about, or just leave it open like this? Because we seem to go through and say, okay, let's talk about, water storage and,
Yeah, let me
little
take a
lakes.
look at how
Take a
that.
look at that and see.
Yeah, because what I want to see is the other individual items, how they're listed on the P and E
Okay.
meeting agenda, and then we'll decide what we want to
Yeah.
do. So we'll rework that one. And if you have comments at the next P and E meeting, we'll
I
incorporate
just
those.
don't want to lose track of them, if you know what I mean.
I agree.
Yeah, exactly.
All right. And so, okay, all right.
So let George decide if he wants to sit and itemize them 1, 2, and 3 in there, he can.
All
Yeah.
right, sounds good.
All right.
Anyone else? Comments from the public? Mr. Neal, any comments?
No, thanks.
Okay, all right, very good.
All right.
Then that brings us to item 9, adjournment. I'm going to bring this meeting to a close at 3:58 PM. Thank you very much for your time.